Hello friends, Jermaine here and welcome to video 2. So in the last video of this authentication and registration series, we looked at registering our user. In this video, we're gonna look at the login or authentication side of it. Let's get into it. If you are using the Dart extension for VS Code, you should be able to, while in this file, just press F5, which would launch a debug session for this app. So saves you from opening the terminal and having to type the command to run this file manually. Now we're going to build our login screen. So our login would look similar to our register screen. So I'm going to copy that and come right at the end, well, before the await close. I'll paste this here and let's make this our login screen. So we're looking for a get request to the login route, and then here in the HTML that's been rendered, we'll say login to your account, and then the action would be login, be a post request. Everything else remains the same. I'll change the title to login to your account. I'll save this. I'll rerun this file, and then I'll come back to the browser, refresh the page, and once I click on login, it brings us here, and the title is correct too. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is to handle post requests to this login screen. So when the send button is clicked to submit our details, so we can do if method is post and the path is equal to our login, then we'll handle it here. So what we can do firstly is we can grab our payload from the request by doing the same as we did for register. So essentially we can do these. So I'll copy this and I'll come down here and I'll paste that. So what we do is firstly we grab our information from the payload of the request, so the username and the password, and then we use the split query string function of the URI class because the payload comes as a query string, and from this function a map object is returned containing the username and password keys, and we're just extracting it here. So this means that we're now able to check our MongoDB database to ensure that the user exists. We say I create a variable called persisted user, and then we'll await on our MongoDB store. What did I call it? I called it users. So I can await on users dot, then we want find one, which takes in a selector where, and we use the EQ for equal, and then the field name we're looking for is username, and we want to make sure the username matches our user from the payload. Once we've got our persisted user, we can grab the salt from that. So maybe persisted user, then from there we can grab the salt, and this was the salt that we created initially when the user was registered. So with this salt now, that would, in fact, before we grab the salt, we need to ensure that the user exists. So if persisted user is not equal to null, then we do that, and we just need one less equal. Okay, so once we've grabbed the salt, we are going to run our hashed password function again, and this function will take the password from the payload and then the salt we pulled from our user. So at this point we are going to compare the hashed password to the password on the persisted user. I think I called it hashed PASSWD. So if those match, then we can for now I'll just print matched user. I'll save this and let's add a breakpoint here, and then I'll reload the server, and then I'll come back. I'll go to Firefox, and then let's enter a user that got registered last time. So I think we had Mary, and then we had that as our password. Okay, then I'm gonna come back here. No, guess our breakpoint didn't work, but not a problem. I take it as this did not match. Hold on, let's look in our database. Okay, so we got Mary. Okay, we got John. Okay, we can use John. Essentially, I think the reason why it didn't work with Mary because there's a space after it. But never mind. Let's try with John. John Doe, I'll hit send. And yeah, there we go. So we matched our user, which means that at this point, we are able to create a user session, and then we would use that to manage the user's logged in session, basically. Okay, continue with that. So what I'm going to do is to have another collection called user sessions, which will contain the sessions of our logged in users. So user sessions and its collection. Once the user is logged in with the correct credentials, we can create a session object, and in this session object we'll just have the username and then have our session token. So with this session token we'll generate a UUID token. I think it's called a universally unique identifier or something. Anyway, we are going to import the UUID package that we installed in the last video. And then I'll come back down here, and the way to use it is to create a UUID object, and then from there you can call any of the methods. So to generate a v4 string, and then from here we can just persist it to our user sessions collection. Alright, we also need to check in the scenario where the password doesn't match. So if it doesn't match, then we can write to the response incorrect user and/or password, and we need to set the status code to http status dot unauthorized. Yeah, I think that's right. And then we're going to do response dot write incorrect user and/or password. Okay, so I'll restart this, come here to Firefox, let's enter some wrong credentials, hit send, then save. Yeah, of course this wouldn't run because of this condition. So let's enter a user that exists but with a wrong password. There we go. So if hashed password, yeah, so if that doesn't match, then we get to our response, we create our status code, and then we write back out to the browser. So if I come back here, yeah, we got incorrect user and/or password. So this seems a bit complex. I think we can simplify this a bit more. So what I'll do is I will add a try catch over here, and then in this try catch we'll have some of this logic. So what I'm thinking of doing is, if our persisted user is null, if it's null, we can throw an argument error, and in this argument error we'll say incorrect user and/or password. Else we'll just do this bit. So when that argument error is thrown, we can catch it in here, and then we'll just write out this response. So I can get rid of this else. Well, I can still keep this else. So if the password is not matching, we can throw this again. And let's add curly braces around that. Okay, so let's give this a go. So if I enter the right user, well, if I enter a wrong user with the wrong password, get status code unauthorized, and get incorrect user and/or password. If I enter in a correct user but with the wrong password, you still get this one, incorrect user and/or password. Okay, and if I enter in a correct user and password, you just get a blank screen. But then if we look in our database, we've got a session added for John, and then here's the session token that was generated. Okay, so let's remove this actually, and I think I can just do remove. I realized I got the wrong collection name, so it should be that. Okay, there we go. And if I do find, we find nothing there. All right, so well, now we actually need to log our user in. Before we redirect to our dashboard, actually, let's amend this response sendback slightly. So I'll use my render HTML helper function, and instead I will render a message, incorrect user and/or password, and then I will have an anchor back to the login page. And let's add a title, unsuccessful login attempt. So I'll save this and let's try that. So if I enter in user that doesn't exist, incorrect username and/or password, unsuccessful login attempt, go back, and that'll bring us back here. So now that we've confirmed that our user sessions actually is being persisted in our Mongo database, at this point we should be able to redirect the user to the dashboard. But we're not going to redirect them to the dashboard immediately because we need to persist the session details in a cookie that is sent back to the user. So on every request, we would look at the details of that cookie, and then we'll determine whether to log them in, or we'll determine whether they're logged in or not. So let's do res.cookies.add, and we want to add a new cookie. And the name of that cookie would be user token, and the value of that cookie would be the JSON encoded session. And in fact, we can leave it at that, or we can just add an extra layer. Let's say utf8.encode, which returns a list of integers which cannot be assigned as a value to this. So we can also do a base64.encode. Okay, so we return a base64 representation of our session object. Okay, and then afterwards we are going to redirect the user to our dashboard. We'll call it dashboard. So at this point there's no content for our dashboard, so let's create it now. So have a similar structure to this. We want to check if a GET request is being made to the dashboard. First need to check our user token cookie, and the way we can do that is we'll look in our request object, then we'll look in our cookies, and we want the first result where the cookie's name is user token. And if that's not found, we just want to return null. So then from that, if our user token cookie is null, then we will redirect the user to the login screen. If it's defined, then we need to decode this user token, and then it will just be essentially would be this, but we're doing it the other way around. So it'll be JSON decode, and then we'll UTF-8 dot decode, and then base 64 dot decode. This could probably be made a bit simpler, but just for the sake of this tutorial, I'll just take this approach. And then what we want is the value from the user cookie token, user token cookie. And once we've got our decoded value, we can check our session store to see if it exists. So we'll say count await user sessions dot, then we'll count, and in our count we want where equal the session token. So if the session token matches the session token from our decoded user token, and also we want to check where the username matches the username from the decoded user token. So at this point, if count is greater than 0, so it exists, then we're just gonna write out the HTML for our dashboard, and then I'll render a h1 dashboard, oops, and then below I'll say welcome to your dashboard, well, welcome to your account, and I'll say hello, and then our user, so it'll be hello and then the name of our user, then welcome to your account, something like that. And then the page title will just be your account. And of course, if there are no sessions, then we just redirect the user to the login route, and let us test this. So if I attempt to access the dashboard, yeah, it should redirect to the login screen. If I log in with the correct user, then there we have it, dashboard, hello John, welcome to your account, and we've got the right title there. Okay, we need to build our logout flow, which reminds me I need to add a link to logout. Okay, so if I save and reload this, should be able to, yeah, have a logout link now. Okay, almost there. So if method is get and the path is logout, then essentially we're going to log out the user. Now at this point we need various things, so we can assume that the user is logged in, so we need to get that, retrieve that. If the token cookie is null, we just redirect them to the login screen, else we will retrieve the decoded user token details, and then at this point we want to remove where the session token matches that and then the username matches that. And then once that's done, we need to delete our cookie from the response. So it will be response header set, and our response header would be set cookie, and then the value would be the name of our cookie, which we called user token, and then we set an empty value. So before it had a value when the user is logged in, but we set it to an empty one, and then we add a separator, and then we add an option to our cookie, which is the max age, and we set that to 0. So that's effectively how you delete a cookie. You set it to an empty value, and then you set a max age to 0. Okay, so once that's done, we can write out our response, and we'll just say successfully logged out, and then we'll have an anchor going back to the login page, so log back in, and we can also have an anchor redirecting to the root, so back to app. Okay, let's save that, let's give that a go. So if I refresh that and I click logout, yeah, we got successfully logged out. Clicking log back in brings me here, and clicking that will bring me back to the app. So let's log in. I'm logged into my dashboard. Hey, log out, it logs me back out. Let's log in as Mary. And then I get, hello Mary, welcome to your account. Then I'm able to log out. Then if I attempt to access the dashboard directly, I get redirected to the login screen. So let me log in as John. And what happens when I come back to login? It still shows the login form. So let's look at redirecting the user back to the dashboard if they're already logged in. So at this point we can come back to this bit. So when we come here, what we can do is do something similar here. Where is it? Yeah, there it is. So here we'll check the user token cookie. If the token cookie is null, then we can just show the contents of our login. If it's not null, I guess, yeah, we can just assume that they're logged in by doing this bit. So we'll decode the user token, and then we'll check our user session store to see that it exists. If it does exist, then what we need to do is to redirect the user to our dashboard, and we need to await. And if there are no user sessions in existence, then what we can do is we can delete that cookie. So we can delete that cookie and then redirect them back to the login screen. So let's test that out. So if I go to the dashboard, I'm logged in because the user session is still in the database. And if I hit login, should, yeah, still redirect here. So that's good. Then if I come to our database and then I delete all the user sessions there, but then the cookie is still kept in the browser. So if I hit login, and just to confirm this works, I will put a breakpoint over here. So if I hit login, yeah, we're brought here. And then if I focus on that, we get a cookie. Hold on. Yeah, let's see what we get. So user token cookie, so we get a cookie object. And let's see. Alright, so that just renders the login page. Let's try this again. So I'm in my dashboard. I removed the user session object. Yeah, so I deleted the user session object again from our user sessions collection. So that means that the cookie, the user token cookie, was still in the browser. And then when it got here, we checked our user sessions collection to see if there was any session token. So now, because count is now 0, that means we clear was in the browser because it's invalid, and then we just keep them on the login screen. Okay, so if I come back, now we're at the login page. I'll register a new account, so we see the full flow. Hit send, we've got create a new user. In fact, the last thing, rather than saying create a new user, perhaps we should just log that user in. So yeah, so we'll come back to our register screen here. And then once the user is created, if I scroll here, this section, we can copy this bit. And then we will replace it with that. So I'll save this and let's try this out. I'll add a new user called Jim. hit send, and there we go. We're redirected straight to the dashboard. Then I can log out, and that's it. I hope you found this video informative and that you learned something different today. Do hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, do hit the subscribe button, and also hit the bell notification icon next to that subscribe button so that you are notified when new content is released. Of course, if you got any feedback, if you got any comments, let me know down below. Thank you.